Police officers of Reddit, what was your they could have gotten away with it if they had kept their mouth shut moment? I had a car pass me once. Passenger hangs the upper half of his body out of the passenger side window with his middle finger in the air while screaming, F***K the police. He had my attention for the seatbelt violation. I got behind the car and ran the registration. Registration is suspended. Registered owner's driver's license is attached to the registration and his license is suspended. Registered owner also has 2 warrants for retail theft. I stopped the car and they both started with the free speech thing and how I can't stop them for giving me the finger or swearing, which is 100% correct. When I pointed out that I can, however, stop them for the passenger not wearing a seatbelt and for the registration violation, suddenly they got quiet. Driver got arrested for suspended license and his warrants and the passenger got himself a citation. The driver's vehicle got impounded. Moral of the story, tell your passengers to shut their mouths. Had that guy not been a moron, his buddy would have been homeward bound. No a police officer, but I do know of this house in my local village that was a notorious drug den. The police came to search the place, but couldn't find anything. As they were leaving, the lovely owner yelled at them that they should brought the drug dogs. So yeah, they came back a few days later with the drug sniffing dogs and found huge amounts of drugs hidden away. Absolute morons. I was asked to help keep peace while 2 probation officers searched a guy's house. Before everyone gets upset, in most jurisdictions, you have to submit to a search of your person and your home if you're on probation. During the search, a PO lifted the probationer's mattress and said monotonously, wow. The probationer got upset and said, yeah, it's F***KIN meth and a gun. Arrest me, I don't give a F***K. Turns out the PO found a huge dildo, but after the guy opened his mouth, the PO lifted the mattress more and found a bunch of individually wrapped grams of meth and a Glock 17. The PO said that seeing the dildo was enough for him to ignore the mattress, but because the guy said something, he kept looking. That guy's attitude and his need to open his mouth got him 10 years in prison. I was the one that might have gotten away with it, but the cop pulled me over and says, I clocked you going 86. Actually I was going 85. Yeah. That's still over the posted speed limit of 75 miles per hour. Oh, yeah I guess it is. I know what I'm about son, don't try to tell me I was going faster. Not a police officer, but my mom once managed to talk her way into a lesser fine for a traffic offense, but wasn't satisfied with that so managed to sass her way right back into the full fine. Okay, so we had a DUI accident where a guy kept driving straight into the woods into a tree because his GPS was predicting a future street. He walked back to his hotel room and left his check-in papers in the car. So we go to the hotel and go to his room and knock on the door. He did not have to answer, but he did. He was pretty clearly drunk. I asked him if he had anything to drink since the accident. He did not have to answer, or he could have told us that he drank after the accident. He said no, I haven't had anything to drink since the accident, and where I'm from you have 24 hours to report a property damage only accident. So it wasn't even a hit and run. So as I'm locking the guy up he tells me he's a lawyer. I told him I hope you're not a defense attorney, but in his defense, he was drunk. A cousin of a friend of mine travels around the state to take in deadbeat dads. Gets to one place, a 4-year-old kid is home, dad isn't. So the cop starts talking to the kid, making sure he's okay and such. After a bit of this, kid says to cop, want to see my dad's secret garden? Takes him to a closet with a false back, opens it up to see a small pot farm. I've had countless times where dudes give consent to search them or the vehicle and they end up having drugs. Not a cop either. Friend was pulled over for not wearing a seatbelt while he was with a few buddies. Gets handed his ticket. Guy in the back seat says, am I gonna get a ticket too? Officer replies, well, were you wearing your seatbelt? UHH. No. Alright. Can I see your ID? Not the brightest fella about. Pull over this guy for expired tabs. Ask for his ID and he's feeling around for his wallet. Can't find it. He says, ah man, I'm one of you. It's cool. Oh, what department? Oh, actually I'm a security guard, but same thing. I'm polite, so where's your ID? Oh, it's in the... And he motions to the trunk. It's in the trunk. Actually, no. My BS radar is going off. Okay, want to get your ID out of the trunk. Now I don't have it. He starts looking around for another story to use. But now I know I'm supposed to stay out of the trunk. He's also not giving me any more information. No ID. Then I have to take you in and get you fingerprinted. I'm going to get into that trunk one way or another. He's looking like he's lost. I ask him what's in the trunk, but he's not talking anymore. We pull him out and get him in cuffs. Another officer takes him to get ID through fingerprints. Since his car is expired past 6 months, California, we tow the car. In the process of getting ready to tow the car, we need to take a quick inventory. In the trunk was a police uniform with fake patches and a metal badge. No gun, but a duty belt. He also has stacks of child porn. This is a guy who a neighboring city had been looking for months. His MO was to dress as a police officer, talk to kids, and you can figure out the rest. If he just gave me his name, I could have looked up his ID and verified he had one. I'd probably have let him go. But, edit, the neighboring city had zero information as to his name. They only had a vague description of the car and the fact he was posing as a police officer. In fact, what he would do is start talking to a kid in the 9 to 12-year-old range. Tell him he has to be taken in for questioning, handcuff the kid, and take him to his car. He was a bad dude. So this happened a few years ago. I was patrolling with my buddy at night. It was almost the end of our shift. Suddenly, we get an alert that a local nearby gas station had just been robbed, unsuccessfully, and that the suspect was supposed to pass by us in a red car. Indeed, seconds later we saw a man speeding through the road. Details on the side, we ended up courting him on a dead-end street. When my buddy was handcuffing the suspect, I asked the suspect if he had had something to do with the robbery. He repeatedly said, "I have never been there. Ask the ginger lady." Turns out the cashier that night was an old lady named Marcy, covering up for her ill daughter, whom had never been able to identify him since he was wearing a black mask during the robbery, which we never found. Marcy had ginger hair. Fortunately, the suspect was kind enough to inadvertently confess the crime. How could he know the appearance of the cashier if he had never been at the crime scene? The jury thought the same. Fellow officers stopped a car for return violation. Guy is a wannabe drug dealer who we have seen around the bars before. We are talking with him and ask permission to search his car. He agrees. I'm BULLS***TTING with him about sports and weather, and the officer finds a duffel bag. So I joke and say, "Nothing in there that's dangerous, right? Like bombs or grenades or explosives?" He nods and says, "Yeah, a bunch of dynamite." I'm waiting for him to laugh or smile or shrug or do something that screams it's a joke. Nothing. I say, "I'm going to open the bag and look, okay?" expecting at any moment he will stop me. He doesn't. It was 8 sticks of dynamite he stole from a construction site. Separate story. If he didn't say anything, I would have ignored the bag thinking it was tools. Pulled a guy over because his car was looking pretty run down. Wanted to lecture him that he shouldn't be driving around at night with only half his lights working. We got out of our car, I approach the driver window, and he looks at me and says, "Yeah, alright, I admitted I smoked weed." Alrighty then. Wanted to give him another chance. "What? We know your lights are broken." "No, I smoked weed." QI roll bonus. God damn it, man. So we parked his car and drove him to have a blood test done. We were already done with our shift for an hour because we waited a long time for the doc. So when we got out, I was about ready to go home. He turns to me and says, "I can't call anyone to pick me up or I'll get into trouble." Good Samaritan kicks in. End up driving the guy home. He's a chill dude, obviously. Don't know what happened to him after. He probably lost that internship he kept taking about. Poor guy. I'm a nice guy and I enjoy a chat. You'd be surprised how much this lowers someone's guard. Stood in full uniform, people will just start telling you things that could get them in trouble. Multiple times I had to tell people to shut up. It was usually petty things like where they hid their weed stash that they'd got a bifter in their pocket for later. Not really worth the time and effort to deal with how skeezed we were. One time a guy really got himself in trouble by effectively telling me he had stolen property on him. I had to act on that one. Not a cop, but have a buddy that is. Nothing too crazy, but he's had countless moments where he's tried to give people a break or all they had to do was sit down and be quiet, but they end up talking themselves into jail. Recently had a dude he pulled over that was a bit over the limit, but not too much, so he was gonna let a friend pick him up instead of arresting him. Guy got to talking and basically revealed driving under the influence was something he did fairly regularly. A single mistake is one thing, but my buddy decided the best chance at getting him to stop would be learning this lesson the hard way. Not a cop. I had a roommate in college that was no friend of mine. He got in a fight at a bar and was kicked out. He tried to go back into the bar and got thrown out again, but a cop happened to be driving by the second time. Cop told him to relax or he was going to be arrested. He told the cop to arrest him. Cop handcuffs him and puts him in the back of the cop car. Roommate then started banging on the window. Cop then recuffed him with his hands behind his back. Roommate's stupidity carried on for the next couple months. He was supposed to go to court over the whole thing, but didn't show up. Police showed up at his job, cuffed him and brought him to court. Judge told him he would have just received a slap on the wrist, but he now had to send him to jail for a couple days. He was scheduled to report to jail a week or two later, and he didn't show up for that either. By this time, he disappeared. I never saw the guy again. Not a cop but a witness. During college, my friends and I would hang out outside and smoke hookah. Frequently we would invite strangers who passed by to join, or campus police would casually chat with us as they made their rounds. So one time a group of freshmen walked past and asked to join. After about 15 minutes the campus police car rolls up and the freshmen get visibly nervous. We tell them calm down, the cops are chill. As soon as the cop gets out of the car, one freshman bolts and makes it about 20 feet before the cop tackles him. We all clap and heckle the kid. Upon searching him, the cop finds a bunch of weed. Then he says, "You realize prior to running I had no reason to be suspicious. I just wanted to talk to my friends over there," and points at us. The cop ends up writing a ticket and sends him off. Last night, a dude had a gun inside his house. I asked if the gun was stolen. He said I'm not sure. I asked if I could run the serial number. He gives me the shotgun. Comes back stolen from a department store. He was arrested for possession of a stolen firearm. All he had to do was say no. I had no other reason than consent. Not me but my dad. My dad was in an army helicopter unit assigned to local police to search for marijuana plants being grown in the rural parts of my state in the 1980s. One day, they found a decently sized gaggle of marijuana plants located just off the property of a farm. They landed the helicopter on the farm and talked to the farmer, asking him if he knew that someone was growing weed near his property. The farmer got scared and immediately confessed that they were his plants. He was arrested by the police. Oddly enough, if the farmer would have played dumb, the army and the police were just going to remove the weed and leave. This is going to be buried, but it's funny. So here, I was a cop on an Air Force base in Alaska. 3 guys robbed our Class 6 store, liquor, and we responded to the store, but got caught in traffic at a light on the way. So we were sitting there with lights and sirens on trying to get people to move out of the way when the back door to the car ahead of us opens, and a guy gets out and goes spread eagle against his trunk. Confused, we get out to see what was up and realize that these were the robbers. Edit. Thank you for the silver. So after calling it in and making the arrests, we told them that we had no idea they were who they were. The driver and front passenger were pretty upset with the backseat passenger. A friend told me a story about when he and his teenage friends had a **TTY garage band. They were jamming one night and some family member gets into it with her boyfriend in the house. Cops were called. They stop playing and go outside to watch. A cop walked over to them to find out who they were. One kid straight up admitted that he had been drinking that night, because that wasn't what the cops were there for, and he didn't see anyone drinking. He said he didn't care. The kid took that as permission, walked into the garage, and walked back out with his beer. Now the cop cared enough to take him to jail. Absolutely never admit to any crime without a lawyer present. Just because you know you did it and the cops know you did it doesn't mean it'll hold up in court or that they'll think it's worth the time to prosecute it. You don't need them to think you're a good guy who made an understandable mistake. You need to stay out of a cage. Keep your mouth shut. The only word you should be saying is lawyer, not a cop, but was part of a jury. This guy's being questioned about a rape, and he tells the officer that it'll be ULLS***T just like the thing 10 years ago. His ex-wife is just a lying B****ch trying to get him in trouble. Cop starts looking into his record from 10 years ago and finds out he was under suspicion for another rape, but left town before he could be questioned, so it got put aside. That prosecutor retired and it was forgotten. New cop takes it to the prosecutor and they reopened that case. We convicted him on all counts and he got 25 years in prison. In the new case I believe he plead guilty since he's already facing the rest of his life in prison. Had he kept his mouth shut they wouldn't have ever looked that far back. Now he will probably never leave prison. I'm a police officer in the UK. It was about 2 AM, which meant street lights were off. As I was patrolling I saw a vehicle drive with only his side lights on. Spun around, pulled them over. I asked for his license and it's a provisional. His co-pilot was 20 and didn't have a license and the vehicle didn't have L plates. This means he's driving otherwise than in accordance of his license and also driving with no insurance, because as if he did have any insurance, driving otherwise than in accordance normally invalidates it. So I got him in the back of my car to speak to him, start writing out a traffic ticket for no insurance, and was going to seize the car and let him off for driving otherwise in accordance. However, as I'm writing the ticket, he says to me I shouldn't even be driving this car. My mate doesn't even know I took it. I just kinda pause. I'm sorry, what? Yeah, my mate lives just up the road and I was round his. He fell asleep, so I thought I'd just take the car and go for a ride. Right. I get another unit to go to the address and the suspect's friend confirms he's not happy for him to be having the car, especially now that it's being seized. So now, instead of 6 points and a 200 fine and a pissed off friend, he gets nicked for TWAC, taking a vehicle without the owner's consent, driving otherwise than in accordance of his license, and for no insurance. He's been to court and received 6 points and just shy of 1,000 in fines and costs, as well as a pissed off mate, and spent a night in a cell. Former cop here. We always had a statement that we used if we ever got in trouble, and it applies to anyone. No poly, no waiver, no statement. Basically never consent to take a polygraph, never waive your rights, and never make a statement. You may think you're doing yourself a favor by answering questions and trying to be helpful, but more often than not you'll end up digging your own grave. Be polite about it, but respectfully refuse anything until you've spoken to a lawyer. Defendant, not an officer. My buddy and I were drag racing through town late one night, drag racing in my used beater ass book, so speeds were low and nobody was in danger. Flashing lights behind us, my buddy gets pulled over and I get away clean. Later that night we get a phone call. The officer asked my buddy, "How's your friend?" because he didn't even get my plates, and my buddy, not great under pressure, responded by giving him my name, address, and phone number. Cue summons to traffic court for both buddy and I. It's the day of. We're at the courthouse, dressed in the closest thing to suits that two idiot high school boys have, surrounded by our parents and siblings in their Sunday best. My case was first. Buddy was subpoenaed to testify against me because he was the only witness that I was present. The trial starts, but the officer isn't there. Let me repeat all that. There is no officer on the other side of the court. My buddy is the only witness that either of us were racing that night, and he gets up on the stand. Let me also remind you that he's not great under pressure. Judge, were you racing that night? Buddy, yes sir, we were racing. Drag racing specifically, sir. Judge, and your friend here was who you were racing against? Buddy, yes sir. His name's Waknight8111, and we were drag racing together. Judge, are you sure about all that? Let me remind you that there's no plaintiff in court today. You are the only witness and what you say goes. If you say you two weren't racing, that's what I'll have to believe. So, again, are you sure that you and Walk Knight 8111 were racing? Buddy, yes sir. Drag racing, sir. That Matherlova cost me like $500 and more than a few points on my license because he couldn't just keep his mouth shut. I work as a correctional officer. We had our inmate push a mental health specialist to the ground and attempt to kiss her. While getting the inmate separated from the victim, he spontaneously stated, "I just wanted to have sex with her." Went from simple assault to attempt rape. This was a bad situation made much worse by speaking. Well, just today, I asked her, "How did you get here?" She said, "I drove." Her license is revoked, and I knew that. When I was a cop, my squad mate and I were foot patrolling an area that was being burglarized heavily in a nice neighborhood. We saw a dude walking wearing sportswear and decided to have a chat with him to see if he has seen anything suspicious. Because we were extremely close to his house, he invited to his home and talk. So we walked and talked and he invited us into his home. The dumbass didn't think about this because he had left out bags full of stolen items out on the kitchen table, sorted out, as well as his burglary tools on the counter of the kitchen. After a minute we realized this dude was breaking into his neighbors' houses and stealing their stuff. If he didn't invite us inside, we would have never guessed he was the guy doing it. Make sure to like and subscribe for more daily content. Thanks for watching.